Yeah, I'm going to walk. I'm going to walk. One announcement in the hallway and let's go.
Yeah.
Just give them an announcement. Poor man. Poor man.
Just a quick announcement for those in the overflow room that are having difficulty with the slides. They will be posted within 10 minutes to JAGU. And with that, I'd like to introduce Colonel Sullivan, DCO East, who will make presentation on the legal command update.
How's everybody? The slides say Brigadier General Ural D. Glanville, I am not him. We know that by a few different ways. He's in South Africa visiting a family member, a long time planned trip, so he had to go to South Africa. I asked him if I could go for him and he could come here. He did not accept. I am here. He is an Atlanta Falcons fan. Really. And I am a Dallas Cowboys fan. Right. And some of us like whatever team General Shapula likes too. So I'm here to give General Glanville's update on the legal command. As we're here, we're going to walk through several different things. We'll be toe tapping and foot stumping some of the things that DJAG just talked about as part of total force readiness, so you are all clear that we're all on the same team and we're all doing the same thing, moving the same direction. All right. Those of you in the overflow room, please participate in this next exercise. So if you are a reserve component asset, raise your hand, please. All right, hands down. Active component assets. National Guardsmen. All right. So in the overflow room, you should have seen hands go up at all 3 times. We saw that happen here. We're all working in the for the same purpose in the same direction, and that's part of the future force. So let's make sure that we're all thinking about that as we're here, because today we're operating in training mode here in Tennessee. Next week, we might be operating in operational mode at your post camper station, and in 18 months, 3 years, 6 years, you may be operating together in theater or at an active component installation in the close knife fight. So what you want to do while you're here is alleviate the introduction in 18 months. Okay? I know General Hill. If I'm working alongside General Hill in 18 months, that's not the day that I want to say, hi, General Hill. How are you? I'm Colonel Ron Sullivan. I'm from Legal Command. That's where we want to do that here now at an on-site. So take the opportunity. Let's make sure we get that right. Clicker. We're supposed to have this, aren't they? Here's our Legal Command team. General Glanville, myself, Colonel Rhonda Sutton, DCO West. Would you stand up, Ron? So those of you out west of the Mississippi mostly, Colonel Sutton is your DCO, and those of you who are on the other side of the Mississippi out east, mostly, fall under my area of the command. We have the CXO, Mr. Glenn Umberger. Would you stand up, Glenn? You'll notice that Mr. Umberger retired recently. And I'm trying to get him to take a new picture, but he won't. CCWO, CW4 Hector Colon. And of course, the one and only Command Sergeant Major Marcos Montoya. We also have some other legal command assets who will be coming up at the end of this brief to identify themselves. So while you're here, if you work in one of the functional areas, so if you're an S4 and our G4's here, if you work budget at your LOD, she's going to kill me. So if you guys protect me after I say this, please. She's laughing already. If you have a budget issue and you're not the LOD commander, so if you're someone else who supports your LOD commander with your LOD budget, please see Miss Katrina Moore, who also recently retired. She's the SOTS, and she works with our G357 ops. But she can help unscrew a lot of problems that are screwed in for you right now, and she can help decipher some things. So things like, we thought we had $40,000 left, and legal command's telling us that we only have $12 left. Well, Ms. Moore will help you see where you've already spent the other $40,000. At the same time, every ARA who's here, dual status ARA, please make sure that you get with Sergeant First Class Harps. If you have not yet done your meal entitlement code issue, which takes a CAT card, sticking it in a machine, and takes about 5 seconds, and your ARA is having trouble or your location is having trouble do that, please just ask Sergeant First Class Harps. Raise your hand, Sergeant First Class Harps. And those of you in the overflow room, you'll get to see him in a few moments because he'll be up here on the stage. All right, Legal Command's mission statement and vision statement. If you saw and paid attention to DJAG's, the TJAG's mission statement and vision statement, it nests within that. It also nests within the Chief of Staff of the Army and Secretary of the Army's mission and vision. What's our purpose? All right, this Final Four season, so I'll use a basketball analogy. Does anyone object to that? Raise your hand if you do. All right, I see no hands. So let's take our active component. And at the start of a game, we put 5 players on the court. We're going to call them active component. All right, active component, tip off, they start taking the ball. Coach reached down after about 6, 7 minutes. He looks down the bench, and he needs a new point guard. Well, that point guard's in this room, in the overflow room. Cool. Point guard's in the reserve, one on the bench is in the reserve component of the National Guard. So that means you've got to be an expert at what you do, at something, right? Ad law, military justice, contract law, cool. You've got to be an expert at something, but you must be also broadly skilled. Skilled enough that when you show up on the court and something happens where you now have to play small forward for some reason, you better know what the small forward does, okay? So that's what we do. We're here to provide agile, growing, adaptive legal professionals, that's lawyers, paralegals, warrant officers, who can be plugged and played at the point in time to put the right person in the right place. And if you show up and you're not in the right place, you should be able to do something in that area or know where to find it. So everyone doesn't know everything from the basic course, I'm sure, but you know that you're supposed to have access to all of those books. Not all of them, all the time. But when you get a question that's not in your area of specialty, that's your job to go to the book and figure it out. But if that's your new area to play on the court, you need to become familiar with everything in that book and then know the experts to reach out to. Legal command, mission, and vision. What are the CG's priorities? Well, there they are. Readiness is number 1. The others are things we are working through and making sure that they're not as important as number 1. So we're going to do AC-RC integration. We're going to support the AC and the RC. We're going to take care of family members, soldiers. We're going to do what we're required to do under 2710. Cool? That's our task organization. This chart just lets you know that for those of you in active component or reserve component, this is what an LOD looks like on paper. It doesn't look like that if you actually go to the actual battle assembly hall. There are actually people there. So, and We have the headquarters, which are about 110 personnel with a major HHC commander. We have 23 LODMs. That's a LOD multifunctional. The next slide will show you the types of things an LODM does. We have 3 TDS LODs, and they're highly focused on defending America's best with the best lawyers we have defending them. We have 1 military judges unit. And a little bit later in the slides, you'll see that they're doing 11% of all Army cases. All right, 11% of all Army courts-martials, our reserve judge advocates, are the military judges in those cases. And then we have the 13th LOD. The 13th LOD is an LODE. And they call themselves LODE. They like to say they're experts because they are. They're each focused in some area. But you can't go to the 13th LOD and stay in the 13th LOD. You go there, you get some great expertise. You're supporting either OT-JAG or OT-JAG, depending on how you were taught to say that. USALSA or TJAGSLICS. You have a particular area of expertise, you're working on that. And once you finish working there, we rotate you back out to either an embedded reserve unit, or we take you to an LOD, put you in a leadership position, and you are to take that expertise and train some other folks on exactly that. Same as our embed folks. We hope that our embed folks come from doing their embed specialty, Chief of Justice, Chief of Ad Law, Chief of Rule of Law, National Security Law, and come back to an LOD and train some folks up. Because you'll see on the next slide, we do have general teams and specialty teams. Any questions about that? While I'm here, I just want to foot stomp something DJAG said, okay? We're here to integrate. We have about half of us raising our hand. Everyone raise your hand for a second. All right, so everyone knows how to do it, huh? So when you get the email, there's an email that comes out periodically that says, these are the mobilization opportunities across the Corps. Yes, some are more important than others. When I say that, I just mean some are closer to the knife fight than others are. Some are directly in it. Some are arm's length away. Some are 2 arm's lengths away. Or if only 45 people raise their hand over and over again, then we're only broadening the skills and validating the training of 45 people. We have about 1,600 personnel in the books out of 1,850 billets. We have about 800 of them who are focused on something else. RFX units, TDS units, military judges, already mobilized, already deployed. That leaves about 800 others who can actually raise their hand. All right? So I'm going to say something so everyone's clear about this. If it's a stateside mobilization, and you're right now saying, well, I can't really go very far away from my family. Can't really go very far, and I'm sure Lieutenant Colonel Summers would foot stomp this with me. You live in Tennessee, and there's a mobilization to JBLM. If for some reason that mobilization is up and you say, well, I have to be back every, at least 1 week in a month or so to see my family because of X, Y, Z is going on, and it's not something catastrophic, well, that's a better mobilization opportunity for you than going to Qatar. Cool? But if this is the time and things are going well, and there's a mobilization opportunity to Kuwait, or deployment opportunity, that's one where you can raise your hand and go. Do it now. And we're all clear that no time's going to be a good time. All right? Any questions about that? If you've got them, you can raise them. Overflow room, you can text them in, we can talk about it. Cool? But we're designed like this, with this tax organization structure at an LOD, specifically to give everyone some opportunities at training in different areas. And as our AC and RC partners right next door call upon us, we can send the right asset over. So embed unit has a board. You need a recorder. Well, you call the LOD that you partnered with, and you're going to see the new partnership maps here pretty soon, right, man? And they're going to come out, and you'll see your partner. I'm just going to go out on a limb. Go out on a limb. In Seattle, Joint Base Lewis McChord's there. Who? 6 LOD is in the same area. Who? I have a hunch that 6th and JBLM are going to be partnered. So if JBLM's in need of an additional trial counsel to assist on a court-martial or 15-6, I imagine the SGA will pick up the phone, call the LOD commander and say, hey, I need you got a trial counsel over there I can use? Well, yeah, we have a trial counsel who can go up for about a week or so next month and take care of that. Hey, thanks a lot. Well, partnership's working. Same way as JBLM's SGA, one of them calls up and says, hey, we're going to the box and we need an additional at-law attorney, major type. First call is going to be the LOD commander at the same time as working with PPNTO to get that mobilization worked out. And guess what? By the time the paperwork gets worked out, there's already a person identified, as opposed to waiting for the mobilization list to find someone, 5 or 6 people to raise their hand. And that's what partnerships are going to do. But this LOD task organization is what helps do that. Cool. These are the capabilities inside an LODM. All right. There are LOTGs. The team chiefs of an LOD general is a major. You can see how it's made up and you see what they work on. Specialty teams are led by lieutenant colonels. And there's various specialties. Every specialty area that we work on as a judge advocate, many of the LODs have them. Yes, there are 4. Different LOD commanders do it differently. Maybe the entire LOD is focused on one specialty. So they have many plug-and-play experts in that area, so they can train people up. The LOD commander may say, our teams, we have 2 specialties across 4 teams, and it runs across the 56 personnel in our unit. Some LOD commanders say, we're going to be not all things everyone, but we're going to be 4 things to everyone. That's an LOD commander issue, but there are some geographic issues. For instance, out in California with the 75th and the 78th, as well as up in the 6th, they have some environmental issues that happen. They have DISCA issues that happen in those areas all the time. So you'll see that if you engage those commanders, they have DISCA assets a little more than others. But there's some complex litigation teams on different LODs. There are national security law teams. There are DISCA DOMOPS trained personnel. But our goal is to make sure that we have reservists who are trained up in different areas. And when an issue comes in to the CG, he can pick up the phone. He usually then calls Colonel Sutton or I and say, hey, we have this request from XYZ unit in your area. Who's got the specialty team for that in your area? And we then reach out and find them. And we just connect. All right, let's talk about training for a minute. I was going to hold it to the end because it's in a wrap-up slide. But training for a TPU, it's not like training on a baseball team, right? It's not like training on a basketball team, just going to the reserve center and training. When you take orders, AT orders, and you go to an active installation and you actually do the work that you've been trained to do, you're still training, but you're training hands-on, okay? So you want your mechanic to actually know how to turn the wrench before they touch your car, not just train back in the training center. So that's what's happening when reservists go to an active component installation. So when we say readiness, readiness isn't just staying in the reserve center. Readiness isn't saying, hey, I'd like to take 2 weeks of my AT to stay back at the LOD and help out the AGRs do some things in the headquarters. That's not making you a better paralegal. That's not making you a better judge advocate or legal administrator, unless you're actually working in your function. So that makes sense if you're doing LOD work in support of an RC unit in your same building as the recorder or work in ad law issues. That makes sense. But if you want to validate that you actually know how to do it, go out to NTC and grab an ad law packet. I guarantee you the SJ out at NTC would be happy to have you assisting their ad law chief, turning over some packets, especially while someone's out on maternity leave, convalescent leave, someone's deployed and they're down a hand. If you're an expert in rule of law, national security issues, anything like that, any active component post across this country, I don't even have to pick up the phone and call them right now. Every SJ would be happy to have you there as an additional eye, an additional brain, an additional asset to turn over packets. And it's okay to make mistakes, because we all make them, especially if you have a chief in that office who can look at your information and say, hey, yeah, that's how we used to do that. But here, let me take 2 steps out for you. Let me show you how we do that now. Cool? All right, here are the priorities in training. Priorities in training, the priorities are still the same: readiness, excuse me. And with the readiness, let's talk about a couple of things that are up there. We have RFX units, and those are focused force units, and we'll talk about them specifically about 6 or 7 slides down the road. But they're training for their mission. Whatever their assigned mission is, they're training for it. And I can tell you now, 14 days of AT and 48 mutas just isn't enough. So we have mechanisms to fix that. And RFX units get a little bit more time to do some training. The idea is that they don't show up connected to their ready force assigned unit and they're learning what their mission or task is or becoming familiar with it or just now getting their malaria shots. All right? The idea is during your time training as an LOD soldier, you're actually preparing to do what your mission is. Next, let's talk about developing and growing future leaders. Our job, as TJAC talked about, or DJAC talked about with building the bench, right? Who's going to be the next LOD commander? Who's going to be the next LOD deputy? Who's going to be that major team chief? How do we find that person? Well, we do it in the training that happens at our LODs. LOD commanders, team chiefs, chief paralegals. You're supposed to be taking your eyeballs, looking at your personnel, observing that they are growing and developing. And your job then is to help identify and develop that person. Now, that doesn't mean that you ignore the person who's not developing in the manner that's impressive to you. What that means is that you actually take your hand, you grab them by the arm, and you say, hey, let me help you a little bit. Let's walk you down this path here. This is helping to develop you. Now let's take you down here and do something else. Now you've just helped develop a soldier who wasn't developing. And you get to do that at your battle assemblies. You get to do that by programming the annual training that they do. We have a Best Warrior competition coming up next week. Cool? That's training. It's validating training, but it's also training. And it should also be training throughout the year. It shouldn't just simply be, hey, we have Best Warrior competition coming up in 3 weeks. CSM's asked for packets. Hey, let's go outside and see who can. No, that's not training. That's not training. All right? No one wants their kids to be preparing for the history test just to take the history test. We want your kids to be training for the history test to be able to, in 3, 4, 5 years, understand history so they don't repeat it. So let's not just train up our NCOs to show up for the Best Warrior competition 3 weeks before. Same as all the other training that we have. It's not training for the sake of training. We provide support. When we say embed units, we're also providing support to the geographic and functional commands across the country. Okay? So that's where it's not just simply on AC posts. Sometimes it's with an RC partner who is actually in the process of doing AT themselves. They might need a lawyer. They might be short lawyers. And it's our job. We actually have the Legal Command FX coming up, and we have other reserve component assets that are coming in to assist us in various areas, whether it be signal or medical. So we're actually doing the reverse for some of those other geographic and functional commands as they're doing their missions. Cool? This is the milestones chart. It's an eye chart. What's the point of the chart? Those are the major functions that we have going on in the legal command. And you can see where we are now. We're at the Midwest Great Lakes onsite, 24 March 19. All right? We're waiting for an official announcement, but shortly we'll have the change of command for the legal command. Once we have that, we'll then move into the Legal Command FX. Once we get to Legal Command FX, we have the Northeast onsite. We have several WARXs that we're participating in. Every LOD commander in this room has probably made some of the TPU soldiers nauseous by the words readiness and metrics. And be ready. Who's red? Get green. Cool? All right? But let me tell you why it's important. It's important because you can't just show up, get your PHA, and get to the mobilization platform when you have to wait for LHI to call you back for an appointment and you have to be at the mobilization platform in 3 days. It's too late. You can't get your DD-93 completed and in your system, in the file, especially if you do it with IPERMs. It'll take 6 weeks to get there. What happens if you die in 3 weeks and you still have your ex-spouse on your DD-93? They're happy to take the check and deposit it and look at your family and laugh, unfortunately. You can't do your SGLV in less than 24 hours. And I imagine you want to pack and hug someone and talk to your kids, talk to your employer. You might want to do something else with that time. That's valuable time. But more importantly, you've been told to do it. All right, so let me foot-stump that one. You've been told to do it. If you haven't done it, you're wrong. If you can't track your own individual readiness metrics, you're wrong. It shouldn't take an 06 LOD commander or an E8 or an E7 chief paralegal or senior paralegal to tell you, especially if you're a major, lieutenant colonel, sergeant first class, because we have specialists and sergeants, E5s, who can get that done and then show up to battle assembly ready to work. The MR2 is what I'm pointing to. The MR2 is the measure of our readiness and several other issues, several other items. Is the legal command ready? Are the soldiers ready? Is the unit ready? Is an LOD ready? Every LOD commander is focused on it, and I'm spending time on it now with the update because I have a captive audience. So that ties directly to readiness. And your commanding general would like you to be ready. Your TJAG would like you to be ready. Your Chief of Staff of the Army would like you to be ready in the Sec Army. And everyone at home whose freedom and liberty depends on it would like you to be ready. So since it's your job, let's do it. Support to the total force. All right. This is a bar graph that shows how many deployments and mobilizations we've had in the past several years. We're expected to match that again this year. We can't match it if we don't have several volunteers who are ready to do it. I can tell you, TJAG has asked or directed the legal command that when we send up suggestions of names and nominations, that we send up 2 to 3, 4 names. Understand how this works. We're sending up 2 to 3 or 4 names. There's some names coming from the embed units. There's some names coming from the National Guard. That's great. that means TJAC gets multiple names for an assignment. Let me go backwards for a second. Oops. That slide says we have about 1,800 billets. I just told you we have about 1,600 folks on the books. About 800 are focused. The other 800 can actually provide the names and the volunteers. Everyone raised their hand a few minutes ago, so we know hands work, to fill in the mobilization requests that come in. This is where we're currently mobilized and deployed. This slide, you also saw it on DJAC's slide, it talks about where our ODTs are, where our support to our COCOMs are. We have not had DILS missions this year, this FY, but we'll have some. And if you have a foreign language specialty, you should be letting your LOD commander know, especially if with your foreign language specialty, you also have a skill that you're highly specialized as an expert, because we can marry that up with the DILS folks, and you can find yourself in the Congo actually teaching a rule of law class. You can find yourself in South America teaching a rule of law or some other course, providing some other training to our partners around the world. Places where we're partnering. The legal command seems to be in multiple places, and that's because we actually are. We have multiple missions. So in a few minutes, you're going to hear Major Angelia Shampoo. She's the outgoing SVC Deputy Program Manager. She's an AGR. She's done a great job with the mission of SVC. She's taken the baton, she's run with it, and she's stretching it out for her replacement. But we have SVC Counsel and SVC Paralegal who are doing a major mission, major job. We also had, in the room right now is Kim Huda. She was the former commander of the 12th LOD, and Dave Hodgkinson is not at this one, but he's the current commander. The 12th LOD is an RFX unit who was in the Pacific Surge training last summer, and they pulled off an amazing feat. Took an entire LOD to sit in the seats of our PACOM partners over about a 6-week period. But it wasn't just show up and go do that. It was get SIPR tokens for everyone, get everyone their immunizations, get everyone the computer training that's required, not just for NETCOM here in the US, not just PACOM NETCOM requirements, but also Korea NETCOM requirements. So if you guys get sick of doing cyber awareness training annually, imagine doing that 3 different times, 3 different ways, and all the other requirement training. Okay? As well as get their security clearances validated and make sure everyone's was ready to go. Not only did the 12th LOD show up and fall in on the seats, but they showed up, they fell in on the seats, they did the missions, they left-seated and right-seated with the next team that came in from their unit for 1 day, and then did their mission for another 21 days, left-seat, right-seated with their next contingent, and we validated that we can fall in on as our RFX mission with an LOD. All right? We don't know what the task will be for our RFX missions, but we do know that when they come, we're capable of getting ourselves ready, we're capable of getting there, and the 12th LOD is one of our LODs that prove that we can do that. One of the crown jewels of the legal command is the fact that we have a joint SOP with AR North to provide DISCA-trained attorneys to the 13 FEMA regions defense coordinating elements. Now, when you all were watching the news that there were hurricanes last hurricane season, and there was a typhoon last typhoon season last summer, well, there's 5 on this slide, but there were probably a total of 11 reservists who were moving into the fight, just like firemen, into the fire, running in, and they wanted to go help, and that was their task and job. Those calls came, and in less than 24 and 48 hours, we had reservists move into the rear cells to provide their discus support, and we even had some deploying directly to the place where the disaster was occurring. All right, 174th LOD had some folks showing up in Puerto Rico in the mission, down with ID Maramba and his team at the 1st MSC. So understand that's what readiness is. We can't send a non-ready DISCA attorney to show up and then they have a problem. It's our job to be ready in advance. All right, sustaining and enhancing. So I talked about RFX teams, RFX units. So we have these RFX units, and they're focus force readiness units. The focus force units, we have the 12th, 75th, and 174th. They're focused and assigned to particular units on the tip fid, on a tip fid, to do a mission. If that unit is tasked to move out, those 3 units are moving out with those units. We have 4 RFX 3 units. Now they're working the mobilization platforms. Glenn, how long does it take to get what's your call time for a MFGI unit? 2 weeks to get there? To be there and operational in 2 weeks. All right, so we have the Ready Force unit that's going to get up, move to where the unit that they're assigned to, the Ready Force 1, and start working. We have units that will be moving out of the door, and the MFGI unit, the RFX3 unit, in 2 weeks have to be at their platform, whether it's Fort Knox, Fort McCoy, Fort Bliss, JBLM, or Fort Gordon, Fort Stewart, Georgia. Those units have to be in place to send all the units that are going out of the door. That means SRPing them, getting them ready, and actually this month, several of those MFGIs are hot right now, validating that they can do their mission. RFX4 units, the 151st, the 153rd, and the 150th. We're also negotiating right now which will be the next RFX4 unit to be designated, pushed into this fight. All right? Those units, they have no idea where their mission will be. But it does mean that they have to be ready when they're tagged to go. One thing I want to point out, I've talked about mobilizing and deploying. Just because you're in an RFX unit doesn't mean you can't mobilize and deploy. What it means is, before you go call Colonel Summers and Major Worthington, Captain Jordan, you need to talk to your LOD commander. Hey, LOD commander, I'd like to go to X place. Is that okay? Oh, well, that would be good training for you. Well, let's see who else is in our unit. Once they do that analysis, they call up and talk to their DCO and the CG, and you just get an approval to go on that deployment or that mobilization. All right? That's why you're there, but we don't want you just sitting there training just for the sake of training to be ready. If there's an opportunity to get you to more training and validate what you can do, that's your opportunity. So you can still raise your hand. It just takes a little more coordination. The idea is we don't want an RFX1 unit or an RFX3 unit or 4 unit to mobilize half of their folks out of their unit and then they can't do their RFX task. That makes sense, huh? I'll be back to wrap up in a few minutes, so if our LOD commanders with their storyboards, if they would just come to the side table there, side stairs there, that'd be great. So legal commands here to make sure that when the coach looks down the bench and they need another point guard, they need another forward, they need another center, that we're here and ready. That we're not just learning how to play point guard, we're not learning what the plays are after they send you to the table to check in. all right? Our job is to start training now, be ready, and get things done. We bring to the fight so many different capabilities, and what's even better about the capabilities, when you talk about the LOD specialties, when you talk about the things that an LOD is capable of and the capabilities inside, we're just talking about some of their military functions and capabilities. We're not even talking about a career prosecutor with 60 murder cases under their belt going in and finding themselves doing military justice under the new Military Justice Act. So they may not be 100% right now on the Military Justice Act, but if I put them right next to someone who is 100% on it, and I take their 70% on the Military Justice Act with their 60 murder trials, we just put together a lethal team. All right, someone who does mergers and acquisitions, you understand how to read contracts, we put you in the group with contracts, which you're developing contracts expertise. That's what we're bringing to the fight. Our goal is to help you even develop further your military law expertise. Same for our paralegals, same for our warrant officers. Warrant officers, every one of you can't be knowledge management experts. We want you to be broadly skilled in that, but we want you to work budget. We want you to understand how the network works. We want you to be the jack of all trades, broadly skilled. But we do want you to have those specialties because there are places that we need to place you to do that function. Same things for paralegal. Cool. The last bullet there talks about how we support and how that equals training and how that equals readiness. I'm not going to read it for you since I talked about it a little bit earlier, but what I do want to do is make sure that you're thinking about that. Everything you're doing as a reservist to make you better is training. Every time you show up at a place to do your job, that's training. And as you train, we want you to get stronger, just like being in the gym. All right, so next up is the second LOD. Can I get a mic for Colonel Croft?
Sir, do you want to take a question first, or you want to go straight into the storyboard? It's up to you.
Let me go to storyboards and I'll do questions later. Yeah, you do. No, you can't. You can't have it.
Okay. As if you hadn't heard enough of me already today. Second LOD, so in the quad chart, RCRC integration, we actually recently provided paralegal support to the 377th TSC, which is kind of co-located near us in New Orleans, Louisiana. The enlisted soldier that I sent did such a great job that they're now asking for him to come on an ADOS tour because they need a lot of support on boards. I don't know the other LOD commander's take, and I heard what Colonel Sullivan said, but if you work for me and you want to MOB or deploy, you go. I'd take it short on this side of the house so that people can go get that training, education, and experience. Sorry about that. I haven't seen this slide in forever. I thought you were doing them. We do SRP missions regularly, obviously, with our fellow RC units, and we have several actually trained SVCs now at this point. I think it expires after a bit of time, so we keep trying to rotate different officers through. Major Stone being one of the newest ones. He's already gotten a client immediately after his training was complete. We have a lot of people, I'll just kind of move across actually, a lot of people who have done ODT missions or deployments. 4 of them actually did a November 20-day tour in Germany. I have 2 more. We were assigned a new ODT mission that wasn't part of our initial training schedule. 2 people to Guatemala coming up in May. So we're sending an officer and a high-speed senior NCO, actually, I hope to take a brand new lieutenant who's going to get down there and try new things, learn new stuff, and be trained by the NCO Corps to do what we need her to do. How long do I have? 5 seconds?
You're done.
I'm done?
Come on up. Hey. So while the next 5 commanders are coming up, I'll tell them what the CG would tell them is you have a minute to finish your elevator speech, and the next one should be coming up.
I can name that tune in about 45 seconds. So I'm going to focus in on ACRC integration because that's where it's at. Blake Stone, Commander 8th LOD. Sir, good to see you again. Historically, Legal Command has produced what I would call the world's greatest legal assistance attorneys. But the expectation of deployed commanders and deployed SJAs is that all of our folks are competent across all the core practice areas. The only way we're going to get there is through ACRC integration. I'm fortunate in our footprint, we've got Leavenworth, Leonard Wood, Fort Riley. We are plugged in and we have teams at Leavenworth and Leonard Wood. Fort Riley is in our footprint, but somehow historically the 214th LOD has been sort of their go-to. We're trying to change that. Just by, I guess, ad hocery or happenstance, Colonel Jeff Thurner now of 18th Airborne Corps gave us a call. They needed some help, so we have some folks going over there. And also 1st Army, which is headquartered technically outside of our footprint, but close enough. Up at Rock Island Arsenal, we have one of our lieutenant colonels that's going there to do some AT. But the only way we're going to get to where we need to be in terms of competency in military justice, ad law, and the other practice areas outside of legal assistance is by plugging folks in every opportunity we get with Compo 1 OSJs. And I will be followed by,
Hey, John.
I don't know which number.
9th LOD.
9th LOD.
Good morning, I'm Glenn Schmidt. I'm privileged to be the commander of the 9th LOD. We have 50 soldiers in my unit. About 30 of them are here this weekend because we have 12 soldiers who are on AT at Fort Dix. As Colonel Sullivan mentioned, we are a ready force unit, but we still have our peacetime mission, and so I'll start in the upper left-hand corner, our RC to RC support. Every month, we have clients come into one of our 3 locations. My unit is headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, but we have troops in Inkster, Michigan, which is outside Grand Rapids, and Sharonville, Ohio, which is outside Cincinnati. We provide services to commanders and soldiers in Ohio, Michigan, and parts of Indiana. So every month we have soldiers come in for legal assistance. We also have an SRP, usually 1 or 2 a month, that our folks cover down on. That's our peacetime mission, and it continues even though we are a ready force unit. We have lasting ACRC relationships with Fort Knox and Fort Campbell. Their SJAs are here. We have really good relationships with them, and they're great to get our people in to do really good work for them when they have that need. But for the last year and a half, our focus has been on the ready force concept. We, as Colonel Sullivan mentioned, we provide the legal services at 3 MFGI platforms. Mission Mobilization Force Generation Installation is what an MFGI is. Ours are Dix, Knox, and McCoy. The concept is our people will roll in and run the SRP, provide legal services for the several thousand troops who come through those platforms on their way to a battlefield someplace. And we're also working to add to that legal assistance mission, law of war, code of conduct as part of the training. And then you can also see we have some folks who are deployed.
Thanks a lot, Glenn. '91st LOD. Brand new commander.
Well, thanks everybody. Dave Shively, brand new commander of the 91st. So I'm briefing the prior slide. But we have a great RCRC integration piece. We work well with the 310th ESC. Lots of boards that we provide stand-down cover for them. My captains have been greatly involved with them, as well as we're going up with the 290th MP Brigade in June sometime. Spend a whole week with them and try and help them out. ACRC integration, we've had some people that have deployed some ADT time. We're trying to reach out. Obviously, we have First Army up by, we're from in Chicago, Iowa, as well as Indiana, so not many active duty installations by us. We're going to kind of reach out, actually called John Kent, a buddy of mine from Incom, try and get the 91st hooked up with them to try to do more ACRC integration. Upcoming events, obviously we're here this weekend, as well as the FTX coming up for the legal command. Thanks.
128th LOD. Cool.
Hey, good morning.
Good to see you, bro.
Steve Hester, good morning. What is it, 60 seconds or less? Or you use Sarah briefings free, right?
Roger that.
Got it. Real quick, we're one of the units that we have 2 hot missions going on in RFX3. Colonel Sutton and I were just at Fort Bliss on Tuesday to visit the soldiers there. They're doing great things, great opportunities. In addition to doing the SRP type briefings, et cetera, they're also getting an opportunity to follow on with the SJA. Ditto for Fort Hood. I was there last week. The soldiers there are getting an opportunity, and I see the Sergeant Major right there. getting opportunity with 3 Corps to have that opportunity. My point is, here's my recruiting pitch to you if you're out there and you're looking to go to somewhere where the action is. The 128th has an RFX-3 mission as the others. It's good duty, it's great training, and I think it looks good on an OER or an NCOER. That's all I have, thanks.
Thank you, Ron. I'm from the 139th LOD, and we do a great mix of reserve component support as well as active component integration. As a matter of fact, Colonel Colise, she's the SJA for the 101st. She's going to be speaking to us, I believe, a little later this week. So she'll be able to fact check anything I say right now. But I think she will agree with me that the integration between our teams and the SJA's office at the 101st has been exceptionally good. And I hope that she'll be able to explain that a little more fully later this week. But our 2 teams that are co-located with her office at Fort Campbell do a great mix of admin law, legal support in terms of legal assistance and client services and such. And even on the military justice side, one of our majors was able to be lead counsel on a court martial earlier this year, and we're really proud of him for accomplishing that. But it's really something that I stepped into. My predecessors did a great job of building that relationship, and it's going really well. As a matter of fact, one of the ways that we've been able to accomplish that is one of our team leaders is a civilian employee in the JAG office, and he is able to build up a caseload during the week so that when our teams come in on the weekend, there's a ready set of missions for them, real-world missions for them to accomplish when they get there. So that's been very effective. Our Millington team does some work with the Navy, the naval station down in Millington, Tennessee. That has been very effective. And of course, we do our full mix of SRPs and yellow ribbons and that sort of thing too on the reserve side. So overall, it's been a great mix, and I've got great people doing it.
Thanks, John. All right. The staff is going to start coming up to the stairs there while we listen to the 174th commander. He doesn't have a slide here today, not his fault, but Colonel Kevin Barnes.
All right. Good morning, Kevin Barnes. I'm the commander of the 174th for another 60 days or so until about June, maybe a little longer than that. We are geographically spread out. We've got Miami, Florida, St. Petersburg, Orlando, and Puerto Rico. That puts us, puts us in the unique opportunity to be able to service CENTCOM, SOCOM, SOUTHCOM, 1MSC, AR MEDCOM. It allows us to be able to tap into those ACRC partnerships and relationships and be able to get our folks involved in a lot of high-speed activities. For example, Panamax is a big activity for those who are familiar with SOUTHCOM, and SOUTHCOM puts on Panamax every year. We will send folks out. Last year we sent one of our team leaders out. They loved the work that she provided. They asked if she would be willing to come back again this year. And so we're able to maintain those kind of relationships with SOUTHCOM. We're able to do the same thing with 1MSC. They had the hurricane situation, and there was a lot of high visibility coordination between General Schultz and General Glanville. That paved the way for the relationship between the 174th, 1MSC to be able to take care of the soldiers that were on ground during some pretty austere conditions post-hurricane. Oh, sorry.
So we don't have the full staff here today, but what we do have is different staff sections that your folks, if you're here and you work with them, please don't be shy. Ask them whatever you need when they're in the hallway today.
Good morning. I'm Sergeant First Class Harps, G1, and also your SHARP coordinator. Just one note, please keep two of our battle buddies in their prayers, Sergeant First Class White and also Colonel Falk. They had lost family members. So just keep me in your thoughts and prayers.
Good morning. I'm Katrina Moore. As Colonel Sullivan has already put out, I'm the SOTS. I manage the LOD budgets. If you have any questions, please come see me. I am also your command security manager. If you have issues with your security clearances, please come see me. But please make sure you bring your LOD security manager with you. Thank you.
Good morning, Sergeant Major Steve Minyard, G357 Sergeant Major for the Legal Command. I have my hands in a little bit of everything, planning, training, and operations-wise. So we're about to get ready for this FX that starts in about a month. So if you have any questions about the functional exercise, it's a very different animal than what we've done before. I know we have 3 of our support LODs here. Please grab me. I'll be between here and the enlisted office where the enlisted are going to be training. So there's no such thing as a stupid question with this FX. Stay on top of ACFT implementation as well. Kind of getting all the good information. We have an information dump we'll put out this coming week that we got from USARC on what USARC plans on giving us to actually get after that. So I'll be followed by the G37.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Good morning, everyone. Sergeant First Class Rich Barnett, part of a 2-person, heavily involved G37 in your legal command. My counterpart, Master Sergeant Barker, is at JBLM this week prepping the battlefield for Best Warrior. Come see me. Enlisted folks, let's talk PME. Majors, let's talk ILE, please. I know we have a few incoming LOD commanders. If you need to talk pre-command course, I'm your guy for that as well. Anything ATARS related, schools, come chat with me. I'll probably be across the hall in the other building, so hunt me down and let's chat. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Major Darla Zeiset, and I am the Deputy IG for the command. We are here to help. I have Master Sergeant Allen in the other room. Master Sergeant Allen, if you don't mind raising your hand so folks know who you are. We are here to help with any issues. If you've identified trends in your units that you require teaching and training or other assistance cases, we're here to help with that. So please come see me. I'll be available. And Master Sergeant Allen is also available, although he didn't know that.
Good morning. My name is Lieutenant Lee. I'm the new G3 MOBOPS officer. As the command emphasized, we have a lot of opportunities available for you, both OCONUS and CONUS. We also have 12302 TCS per diem based mobilizations. It's a great opportunity for you to serve at the division and corps level with our AC counterparts. Please come see me. Thank you very much.
Major Angelia Shampoo, I'm the USAR SVC Deputy Program Manager. As Colonel Sullivan mentioned, I'm on my way out. In fact, I realized that this is my last on-site as the Program Manager, so I'm really sad to go, but I wanted to say thank you to all the SVC, because I know that you've worked very hard. I also wanted to say thank you to all the commanders for all your support. I know it's a difficult tasking sometimes, but you guys have all risen to the occasion. For the reserve course, July 21st to the 26th is the next SVC certification course. The child course is actually right after that, from the 29th of July to the 31st. And on a last note, all my SVC paralegals and attorneys, please meet me out by the CLE table at the lunch break. So at 12:15, all right?
Thanks. Let's give it up for the staff. I understand there are some questions, and I'm supposed to stand here in the middle. Is that the way it goes, sir? Okay, no questions?
In here have questions? There's
Questions in
one
here.
question, sir, from the other room. So I'll just.
And a question in the back.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
No, Shane Cater can't ask questions.
Morning, sir.
Cool.
Hey, just quick, is there any plan to alternate the LODs that are currently in the RFX unit, sir?
The question is there a plan to rotate units in and out of the RFX? So the RFS designations are coming from ForceCom, then they come to the car, so the unit is designated. We don't have a date like we did with SRM or Arfragen that this LOD rotates in or out. But what we're doing to take some of the relief off is we are allowing some movement between in and out of RFX units in the meantime. It's just not a high turnover because we're talking about trying to maintain a level of readiness. Cool. Next question in here? No question? Question on the text?
Are there any other questions from the room? Okay, sir, there's one question from the other room. This might be PBTNO as well. I'm not really sure. It says, with regarding volunteering for MOB opportunities, can the leadership please explain why sanctuary is a showstopper for a qualified and motivated volunteer?
Okay. Have that person come see me.
Cool, sir.
No kidding. It's just no point in doing it right here, but have that person come see me. We'll talk with Colonel Summers, and we'll try to answer the question. Cool.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Hey, last comments before I get off the stage is keep training, be ready, and victory with justice. Cool.
Sullivan, acting commander of the legal command, right? Thank you so much for your support. I didn't know you were bringing the entire staff, so you'll have to, we'll supplement it for you.
Appreciate it.
And we still, the second still can't join the East. I'm sorry. They're without us.
Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Please be back promptly. We have Brigadier General Hill is going to speak. Quick note, if you're planning to get pizza, we need the money by noon, and our snacks here are on the honor system, so if you take a snack, make sure you pay. Thank you.
So I think it's okay, but it's not all. I'll default. Just signal yeah, although every so often the batteries go out on these things.
Yeah. We have extra batteries too, I think.
Yeah. Oh, you're covered. This one too.
As much as we can. Do you do a lot of presentations?
Yeah, all these on-sites I go to, so I've done 3 this was at San Diego, then Fort Benning. This will be my 3rd federal. I'm going to miss New Jersey. We'll head to Mississippi next month. look pretty interesting. You know, the last on-site was really good for, well, the first one was really good in San Diego. Is that, you know, everybody really kind of wants to know what National Guard looks like. And it's like, oh, okay, I'll make it a recruiting platform. And so I converted it quite a bit to, you know, really showing the National Guard model and how it works. Because it's alien to everybody. It's not alien, but it is. You're just not familiar with it. And then,
Is it hard to transfer like from USAR to depends on the state?
depends a little bit on the state culture. Again, stuff slot has to be available, but basically, you know, no one does much flying or driving other than adjacent states. And you got to be bar licensed. You know, because there's no Title 10. There's Title 32, so it's all licensure. But if there's a slot available, majors and under, easy. Get into leadership positions, then we got to convince leadership sometimes that we can bring somebody in from the outside. But I don't see a problem with it. Because you either learn to be part of the system or you don't. You know, you either learn to be part of the, you know, Guard's a little political. People have been there for 15 or 20 years. Yeah, you know, it just kind of depends where they're at. Some of these states, there's a half a dozen states that are really kind of a pain in the ass. The rest of the states are very fluid. Actually fluid. Yeah, they've been really good. Okay. They've been good. They got good folks actually. Just picked our newest military judge is going to be there.
Oh, really? Let me know when you start rallying back.
Don't forget, even though she announced it there, right before when you break everybody for lunch, re-announce that any FCC paralegals and attorneys, please meet Major Shampoo.
All right, I'm done.
You got it? No, just I just
If everyone can get back to your seats, please.
And I'm shooting for 12:15, aren't I?
You want me to give you any signals or anything?
If I get in 5 minutes, let's go. 5 minutes, go ahead and tell me. Yeah, something like that, and I'll try to just wind it down. I go fast through the slides.
Okay.
And I was shooting for 45 minutes, so I'm going to be down a little bit.
We're getting ready to start. Please be seated.
No kidding. I'll stand right here, so you have to look straight up.
Yeah, good.
Okay, yeah, we're going to rock and roll.
Okay.
So everybody take your seats.
I'd like to introduce Brigadier General Hill, who will give a National Guard update.
Thank you.
Okay, so first off, mic check. Can the other room hear me? Is anything working at all? Is the microphone working in here? Check. Let's try this side. Testing, testing. Oh, that sounded a little better. Getting a little background. Since I got the coveted pre-lunch spot, this is great. Just wonderful. Okay, so I'm BG Dan Hill. I am the National Guard advisor to the TJAG. More so, I am the assistant to the Chief Counsel for Guard Bureau, and also essentially the supervisor, almost maybe chief judge for the Army National Guard Military Judge program, which we are currently setting up. Here's my briefing for ethics here today. No opinion expressed is part of the Department of Defense, the U.S. Army, or the National Guard. If you're giving these briefs, I think the JER still says you're supposed to say that. So that's your ethics portion for today's briefing. Take that ethics credit. Okay, here's my topics outlined. Basically, I'm going to talk to you in the brief time that I've got here a little about interoperability. First off, how many folks here have deployed or been around National Guard folks before or been in the National Guard? Okay, so how many of you thought they were aliens? We are, but outside of that. Okay, so, you know, we work well, we play well together. Your Army Reserve primarily, there's some active component out there. We all are dual-hatted, dual jobs or doing other things, same way with the Guard. The Guard's a little different, so my objective here today is to tell you a little bit
about the Guard. Army vision. Here's my comment about the Army vision. This, if you read it closely, talks about us fighting one war and deterring others. Back when I started, we were going to win 2 wars and beat the rest of them to the snot anyway. Well, guess what? We have peer competitors now, and this makes the interoperability between all of our functions, between the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, the Coast Guard, everybody, all of our reserve components and the active components, that much more important. We must play well and fight well to win. It is critical for our stuff. You look at that Army vision, we've changed our vision. We used to figure we're going to fight 2 big wars to win. We're going to fight 1 to win right now, and we're going to deter everybody else. We need everybody, don't think we don't. Our priorities, you've just seen this slide earlier, it's all about readiness. This isn't a change. Readiness has been here since day 1. Oh my gosh, I was a reforger. Anybody remember a reforger exercise? Return of Forces of Germany. What just happened the other day? And I just saw this in the blip. We sent 1,500 troops to Germany. Return of Forces of Germany, 2019. I did it in 1988. You know, so guess what? We are now back into peer competitors. We're looking at that big war type concept, force on force structures. Readiness is very relevant. If you haven't read Clausewitz, you never got a good sleep. Okay, so basically Clausewitz and Sun Tzu, read those, analyze them a little bit. They'll give you a little bit of idea how things are working when you talk about the Russians, you talk about us, and you talk about the Chinese. These things are very important in the concept of philosophy in combat and war. You know, when we start talking about war is just policy by any other means, essentially, we're really talking about Clausewitz, Sun Tzu, and how to win. Some of those pictures up there. Why do I put them up there? Well, as last briefing at Fort Benning when I was there, they said pictures are pretty, so everybody wants to see pretty pictures. Up there in the one corner with the ships, the Decatur is right next to a Chinese ship. I mean, my gosh, these get 45 meters away, something like that. That's not good, particularly. And I think that's a MiG right over the bow of one of our ships. The Chinese are starting to build their aircraft carriers. And the Chinese PLA, that's just the Army, 2.285 million. We combine all of our people together, we got 1 million. Their Army is 2.58 million. Force on force, that's a structure problem at that point. Okay, reaching our priorities. This is where interoperability and basically, the total force concept comes into play. We want to integrate our AC and RC components and the National Guard and everything all together as best as we can in order to establish, a fighting base for our system. Okay, this is a RAND report that I pulled up, and it really talks about a lot of the things that we're talking about that Colonel Sutton's going to talk about when it starts bringing people together and our affiliations that we've got. We're really looking at trying to reduce cultural barriers and distrust. Now, gosh, that's when I talked about the aliens, that kind of thing. It's a little bit what it is, because, if you don't know something, you're afraid of it. Well, gosh, I noticed just today, after 30-odd years, that this says U.S. Army, not National Guard. Shocking, shocking. Now, mind you, I went active duty. I was at Fort Bliss. Fort Blissers, anybody? Alumni from Fort Bliss, where I launched to Reforger, went into the Guard, did the Guard all this time, and now, I'm doing what I am doing now. In my real world side, I'm a judge. So I'm a state court circuit judge out in Oregon. And so, kind of seeing everything on different sides of the picture. But we got to reduce our cultural barriers. We got to be able to get the door open between the Guard, the reserve, the active component. Somebody comes off of active component status, I want them in the Guard. I do. I really, really do. I want that active component, culture, understanding, and skill set coming in. And I want the Army Reserve to come in, and I want us to rotate. One of my best National Guard guys just went to the Army Reserve. It was a change. He got a better job option, for him to be able to do. So those are the things we need to do. Cross-component interactions, we need to be working on those. And here's my my star. Facilitate transfers between components. I hear from my Guard people, and I have to fix that, or try to, that we don't want to bring in sometimes somebody from another organization. We don't know who they are. We must do that. We are all in green. So we must, in the Guard, bring in people who want to come in from the Army Reserve, and in the Army Reserve, you should be able to bring people in from the National Guard. Don't be afraid of it. That's what the RAND study says, facilitate transfers between components that meet the needs of the soldier and the Army. Regionally, you may have a better opportunity to move between a Guard unit to an Army Reserve unit. Now remember, in Guard, we're Title 32, and I'll talk about that just briefly in a little while. Title 32 means that you got to have a state law license for that state. So if you're in, I'll just use the Northwest since I'm familiar, Idaho to Oregon, Washington, Oregon, vice versa, we have reciprocity. It doesn't take very much to get a bar license within the Northwest. Other states, maybe not so much. Maybe, but I'm not going to expect somebody to fly from Wisconsin to Oregon because you have to get licensed in Oregon, that kind of thing. And much more difficult because my commander calls me up in the middle of the night and says, Dan, I'd like you out at Camp Riley at the coast in 24 hours because we're having a big meeting because we're going out the door in 24 hours, that kind of thing. So we have to respond fairly quickly. So it's much more regional in that sense. But you know, within border regions, pretty easy actually. Okay, a little bit more about reserve forces. I'm preaching to the choir that we're an operational force. But what I'm going to talk to you about in the Guard is I'm going to demonstrate a little bit that we're an operational force. TJAG's guidance here, as far as being readiness, you've already heard a little bit from DJAG on that, much more eloquent than I'll be able to talk to you. But focus on the fundamentals, you know, core disciplines, soldier skills. I'm going to foot stomp soldier skills a little bit. If you haven't seen a compass lately, grab one, read it. You need to know how to use a compass and do a map. If you get stuck out in the middle of someplace, guess what the first thing the enemy's going to do? You're going to be jammed, get an EMP, you're going to get knocked out, you're not going to have electronics, your GPS is going to go, you know, belly up at that point in time. If you can't read a map, you don't know which you know, side of the world the sun sets or rises, if you don't understand orientation, you're going to be lost at that point in time. Soldier skills, bottom line is we're soldiers first. We still got to put bullets downrange, and if you can't do that, that's a problem. Deployment, I was in Afghanistan. Deployment, I was in New Orleans during Katrina with a weapon. New Orleans when it was empty. You know, so you got to be able to do the soldier job as it comes up. Self-improvement, self-study, domestic operations. I hear domestic operations come up on Army Reserve stuff. If you're thinking you're a domestic operations operator, then you need to get on the FEMA site and do the FEMA training and print off those certificates, and I perm those things. So if you get the FEMA training, I perm those into your records, or at least try to get that taken care of. If you think you're a domestic operations person, you're going to be a subject matter expert, you must get on the FEMA and do their training. That's how you get trained for the National Incident Command System. You need to be familiar with those processes. Team improvement. Okay, I always talk about leadership when it comes to team improvement. The worst teams are led by autocratic leaders. That's my short stay there. Non-toxic, participative, situational leadership. Situational means leadership changes in the situation. We should be participative in developing a team that's talking to us and working through things and coming up with a participative, deliberate decision. As time grows shorter or risk goes higher, then the commander, the leader, the SGA may make those sharp decisions that must be made. Otherwise, when the time is right, the commander makes those decisions, and you follow it out. Every time I see a problem in a unit, it's because someone's telling me that the boss is autocratic, toxic, it's my way or the highway, and the other thing that I like to kind of demonstrate is if they have to use their rank in order to get things done, I think it's wrong. If my captain tells me X, Y, and Z, and I go, well, that's a wonderful idea, let's do that, that's great. But if the captain says X, Y, and Z, and the colonel says, it's not my idea, so no, we're not doing that, it's a problem. You shouldn't have to use rank and levy your rank to get things done. It's there for a reason. But the bottom line is that's because we're the deciders. You know, when you get to be a lieutenant colonel, or a general, we're the deciders. But we should be taking that decision based on the information provided to us by all the folks involved. people, quite frankly, who are smarter than myself, that kind of thing. I do not consider myself that smart. I think general counsel, probably smarter than I am, that kind of thing. But facilitating concepts, Eisenhower, read the Eisenhower book, understand how to build teams, that sort of thing. That's harder than it is. It's easier to be autocratic and lean on your rank. It's so much easier to be autocratic and lean on your rank because you don't have to listen to anybody, and you're right all the time. Filter the information in. As a judge, what do? I'm filtering information in all the time from both sides. They're wrong, of course, but I'm filtering in from each side all the time and trying to make that decision. Recruit, retain, prepare, develop, and support your family, your staff, your people. In the JAG, the weapon system is people, along with your 9mm. I still like the Beretta, by the way. Your M4, I do like the 6.8mm a lot more, quite frankly, and I own one or two. And you're the weapon system. You need to grow the people underneath you. You need to recruit people in from the law schools or people that you know. You need to make sure they're happy at their battle assembly, their drills. You need to make sure that they're growing within the system, that they get the opportunities. Give them the awards. Oh my gosh, you should be, as a leader, developing your plan to get awards for people. If you sit back and go, well, I didn't get an award, so I'm not getting anybody else an award, and I've seen that, that's wrong. You're not much of a leader at that point in time. You need to make sure that people are happy within the system, and you got to do that balance that the DJAG was talking about, especially within the family and how we do things, and you got to cut people a little slack. If somebody's a persistent problem and they're doing too much in the sense of, oh, they're always missing drill, or they're doing this or that, but you got to give people some slack, and you got to make sure that their families are supporting them, and so that means you got to support them in the right way. Okay, non-toxic leadership, I already talked about that, and negative leadership. Okay, opportunity for affiliations. You probably can't read this stuff anyway, but if you really are interested in unit affiliations, this is just really for demonstration purposes. There are already official combat unit to combat unit affiliations out there. These are great affiliation areas, opportunities for the brigade legal staff to go affiliate with the other. So if you're an active component and you've got a National Guard unit that you affiliate with, get those BCT legal teams together so that they have to talk and work together now before it's too late. It's harder to get together in theater than it is doing it now and starting to understand people. Plus everybody starts rotating through and everything. So these are just the line forces, unit affiliations. You can look at the list. I think it's still accurate, but it's hard to actually pull this information up, by the way. But these are unit affiliations that are out there. Okay, joint force. Here's a little bit of information on the Guard. So the Army's 330,000, almost 331,000, and the Air Force 107,000. Why do I say that? The National Guard is joint. Joint. We have planes. They go blow things up because we're a joint force. We're part of the Department of Defense. We're not technically part of the Army or the Air Force. So that's our basic size. So of 987,000, we're 330, about 33%. So we're a chunk of the overall force. Now National Guard JAGs, 901 of the force. I think I have an asterisk here. Of the 901, there's over 100 that are trial defense service, that kind of thing. So that drops it down to 800 that are doing the rest of the core missions that we've got. Okay, here's our quick summary on the National Guard. Okay, this is an artist's depiction of my first drill. The helmets have gotten a little bit better if you use the padding. That's about it. Okay, the National Guard is a joint force. So when you see me in green, I'm really part of the Department of Defense, but I follow all the Army regulations, things like that. But if my counterpart was up here, Dan Bunch, two-star, actually out of Oregon too, he's part of the Department of Defense too. And he follows Air Force instructions, that sort of thing. So we're a joint force within the system. Now the National Guard Bureau, now I'm in the National Guard Bureau now. I'm an Oregon National Guardist, and I'm now Title 10. because I'm part of the National Guard Bureau. So I'm federal today. When I am previous to my job, I would be Title 32 state, but I am Title 10. National Guard Bureau is Title 10. National Guard Bureau is not a command and control function over all the states. The states are like cats. You ever tried to herd cats? It doesn't work so well. So basically, National Guard Bureau is communication and funding, fiscal stuff, for all the states. When I say states, I mean the 54. You got the 50 states, territories, and Washington, D.C. So that's the 54. So if we hear about the 54, what's that? States, territories, and D.C. So National Guard Bureau is fiscal, money down to the states, and then coordination control for DOD. Basically, it's a facilitator. And when you're herding cats, you're just trying to get everybody to get going in the right direction. Okay, state mission. Okay, so at the state level, in charge of the state is the governor. And that's kind of a change at that point in time. So when I'm in state status, Title 32, governor's in charge, goes down to the adjutant general. And they are then the facilitators to make sure that the state is operational within the state, and I'll show you here in a second. Of course, you have your combat mission at that point in time. Our state mission includes, floods and fires and that sort of thing. In Oregon, we're always worrying about the tsunami. One of these days, most of my coastline in Oregon is going to go washing away at that point in time. A little bit like California burning away and the fires we've had in Oregon the last few years. Most of the time when we do domestic operations, state status type stuff, we're in state active duty as a presumptive amount, active status, sometimes Title 32, it all depends. The state mission is subject to state law. I'll try to get to that a little bit later on. Everybody likes pictures. So this is a picture. This is Oregon and Montana, in a domestic operations exercise. These are some of the things the Guard does. We're into exercises, we're preparing for the next mission. Anybody here from Florida? How do you like those hurricanes? Great prep for the National Guard. They just brush off the shoulders and, we're done with another one. Just hurricanes constantly. Okay, duty status. Okay, here's a little, there'll be a test afterwards. So, once again, the National Guard is a joint activity of the Department of Defense and National Guard. When you hear about the National Guard of the United States, this is very confusing. So if you look at the leading portion of a regulation and you see something in a regulation that says, this regulation is applicable to the National Guard of the United States, that means the Title 10 elements of the National Guard. It doesn't mean all the state guards who are in Title 32. You look at the applicability element in the paragraph and it says, it's applicable to the National Guard of the United States and the National Guard. Then once you get that National Guard without the National Guard of the United States, then you have something that may be applicable to Title 32 depending on the circumstances of how that particular reg is in there. Title 10, obviously federally funded, which you all pretty much are. Title 32 is state-controlled federal funds. State active duty, it's all state money. Guess what governors don't want to do? They don't want to spend state money. So they're always trying to figure out how to use just their Title 32 money. The State Defense Force, each state does this a little bit differently, but there is a State Defense Force. So if you ever hear about the state militia or the State Defense Force, the SDF or something like that, that is like a reserve to the National Guard. They are always state active duty, usually voluntary. Nothing other than expenses at all, that kind of thing. And then Title 32, dual status technicians, and also Title 5 folks out there, they're integrated into our system. There's a lot more of a conversion for Title 5 to have Title 5 folks into the Guard now, which is just a straight civilian. Okay, 3 types of jurisdiction. When it comes to jurisdiction, this is a little harder to assert. If you're Title 10, active duty, you're subject to the UCMJ all the time, right? Okay, states do it differently. So you'll have states that are simply duty status. If you're not on orders, you're not subject to jurisdiction. Then you get states that have, if you're not on orders at the time, you're not in a duty status, but had a military connection, then you're subject to the code. So for instance, you're off duty status, you take the Humvee, you drive down the strip club, and you have a fight. We're going to prosecute you one way or another at that point in time, depending on the state. Oregon, we do the nexus requirement. And there's a few states that have 24/7 jurisdiction out there. So for us, we have to look at the jurisdiction of the state for the purposes of prosecution matters. Sexual assault for us all goes to a law enforcement agency up front. It's got to get reported that way. And otherwise, then if law enforcement drops the ball, doesn't investigate, then it's going to get kicked out to National Guard Bureau, and it'll be investigated by our complex investigations folks, the Offices of Complex Investigations. And they also do complex cases in addition to sexual assault. But something like that happens, goes to law enforcement. Law enforcement looks at it and goes, well, that's not something we prosecute, then it has to go to OCI for investigation. And then General Refrano works that entire organization there for OCI. He also told me specifically, he's the chief counsel, that if you're in the Army Reserve and you want to work in the Office of Complex Investigations for a year on ADOS, just tell him. We'll bring you in at that point in time. Also SVC for Special Victims Counsel. Multi-jurisdiction, brief message there. When we're out doing stuff, for instance, Oregon, I've got a brigade that is part Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. Depending on where we're at, jurisdiction is going to be multiple places. If I'm in Idaho, if I have an Oregonian in Idaho with long-arm jurisdiction, I may have prosecution capability jurisdiction from the Oregon Code of Military Justice, federal law in Idaho, and maybe state, city law depending on the violation, that kind of thing. And if I have somebody from Montana, the same sort of thing. So we always have to look for multi-jurisdictional issues, not unlike if you were down in Fort Bliss in New Mexico area down there. Same sort of problems. Okay, state law and the Code of Military Justice, that sort of thing. We've got 54. Okay, UCMJ, you got to worry about one, right? So you crack the book open, you got one big red book. I got to worry about 54 different codes and what they say. They're all modeled after the UCMJ concept because that's statutorily a federal statute that they've got to follow the same concepts. Doesn't mean they're not going to change things. In Oregon, we adopted regulations that provide pretty much the same thing as the UCMJ, so we are operating in the same manner with the same punishments even. So if we go to a court-martial, it can be fairly severe for somebody. Aside from that, then, domestic operations, I got a few notes on there. There is no federal immediate response for the National Guard, so we just don't go rolling out of the gate from our post or base without the governor, a statute, or something telling us we can. We have fiscal authority from National Guard Bureau to do certain things when we are authorized, but it's a matter of state law. So if you're looking at the domestic operations immediate response regulation or the instruction on that, and you're looking and go, well, we can respond for the first 72 hours, and it says the National Guard of the United States can do the same thing. The National Guard of the United States is Title 10. It doesn't apply to Title 32. We in the National Guard have to follow our state law under certain things, and that's one of them. We have to have authority to actually move out, and if we don't, we can't. Okay, federal mission. This is really where we come from, because this is what our basis is. We're federally funded for the purpose of doing the federal mission. I'm not even going to go over those things. Okay, Army Guard. As you can see, pretty much the east side of the country's got the bulk of the Guard spots up there. And I'm in the little area up there on the left coast, which has almost got nothing in it. Okay, patchwork quilt here. Now, in the Guard, each one of these patches represents states and combat units. We have 28 brigade combat teams. If you're coming off of active duty or you want to go actually play in the dirt and the mud and that kind of thing, what you want to do is you get into the Guard and you get into a brigade combat team so that you can go play in the dirt and the mud and that kind of thing, either the tanks or the infantry or whatever it might be. 28 brigade combat teams involved in that. Each one of the other states with their patches, these are like forts. Fort Oregon, Fort Idaho, because there's a structure that we'll briefly show you here that really demonstrates that we are just like a joint base operation system. Combat power, I just mentioned that briefly. We have the 28 brigade combat teams. The National Guard is an operational organization with about 39% of the combat power of the Army out there. And I have airplanes. This is a squadron of F-15s out in Oregon. I'm sure they were headed out to go take care of a unruly Cessna when they were lined up like this. It is an odd picture, actually. They were doing a quick scramble flight for a test that they were going to do. But we fly two squadrons of F-15s in Oregon, And now that we're going to actually start buying F-15Xs, I'm much more happy. We also have tanks. We do play with big toys. Okay, JAG structures. Chief Counsel, that's General Frano. I'm the assistant, just M-Day guy, is all I am. Office of Complex Investigations has a Title X chief. ADOS personnel primarily in it. It's one of those things, if you want a year in, outside of Washington, D.C., and do investigations all over the country, it's a great opportunity. Special Victims Counsel, we place a Title X Air Force person or Army within a region around the states, and they are the full-time SVC counsel for that particular area at that point. So the National Guard Bureau does that. Trial Defense Service has a Title X chief, and then it filters down through the system within Senior Defense Counsel, Regional Defense Counsel, Senior Defense Counsel, and Trial Defense Counsel throughout the states, all using a stovepipe system to avoid unlawful command influence. Military Judge Program, that's what I'm working up right now, and essentially it's got me right now as the Title X chief of it, and within the objective is 8 regional chief judges along with 54 military judges. It's all a TDA program though, Table Distribution Allowances, which means it comes out of hide for the states in order to get them to do that. I'd like to have a TOE organization so I can actually structure it. Trial Defense Service is TOE, so it has a structure. This is what the military judge program essentially looks like in concept and hopefully shortly to be signed off. It follows the TDS regions, although numbered backwards. I followed the federal circuits going from east to west on it. Okay, typical National Guard JAG office. This is kind of a complex thing, but it kind of shows everything. So for like TDS, for instance, the commandant of the JAG school is the top of the TDS pyramid. So in TDS, it goes all the way up through the system, you know, from the state to from the state trial defense counsel to the senior defense counsel to the regional defense counsel within that particular region, up to the chief, and then clear up to the commandant of the JAG school as necessary. The SGA is, you know, under the governor, and then you got Joint Forces Headquarters and all these other different organizations. Typical Joint Forces Headquarters operation there. There's really 2 sides of the house in the Guard because you've got a fort, basically. You've got an active component organization there, so you've got a lieutenant colonel or a colonel or somebody like that, or a T5 civilian, someone as the general counsel. And they are the day-to-day principal legal advisor to the adjutant general. Then you got the state judge advocate, and they're on the personal staff, or supposed to be on the personal staff of the adjutant general. Then you have all the structures underneath them that do all the normal things. But we're blended since we're air also. So you got an air side, you got an Army side, we got our warrant officers, we got legal NCOs, we got paralegals, and we're doing all sorts of missions. The active component is the active side is doing more general counsel, contracts, claims, ethics, things like that. The M-Day side is doing the military justice, the national security law, DISCA, legal assistance, and those sort of things. And unless the state's got money to be able to have them do other stuff. Going a little bit lower than the OSJ Army structure, you got the TDA structures and the MTO structures. TDS is an MTO structure, and your brigade combat teams are, of course, MTO structures. Those are static structures within the system. TDA is a structure within a state that the adjutant general is the one who decides who he wants to have doing different things. Brigade structures, big point here is the last one session I went to, they wanted to know, well, you got warrant officers. I got warrant officers, I got NCOs, I got slots all over. So there's plenty of opportunities for doing different things. And here's the big, National Guard subject state design. The Attorney General's involved in this too, because a military department is actually a state entity, and the National Guard is actually a federal entity in state status, federal funds. And so certain issues are, for the purposes of legal questions, something the Attorney General should be handling and not somebody in Title 32 or Title 10 status even. Core functions look a lot the same. You know, civil administration, ethics, contracts, fiscal, domestic operations. And I think someplace in here I don't really have a state partnership program, but some states are heavily involved in the state partnership program and do legal engagements out in the the world. So if their state, for instance, Oregon has Vietnam and Bangladesh as our state partners, if there is an opportunity for legal engagement and there's funding and the ability to do it, a little more funding would be helpful, then we can throw a JAG in it and do that. And we did that with Bangladesh last year, and we sent, or the year before last, and we sent a major to Bangladesh and did a legal engagement there as part of our outreach ourselves. Okay, M-Day functions, same stuff. We're always doing military justice, separation boards, withdrawal officer recognition boards, adverse administration actions. So as a JAG, you're doing all these different things. Summary, okay. This is my quick summary. Recruit and retrain. Mission command. Exercise sound situational non-toxic leadership. Recruit, develop, and retain your people. Do what you need to do to make our force better. Okay, I'm down to that last little 5 minutes. This is my thank you for you, and since I'm not going to be answering questions, there's my email. Feel free to email me, but I seriously want to thank you for what you're doing. No one should take it for granted what you do, that you come out here. If your family thinks this is a big party, hopefully it wasn't. If your family is groaning as you're going for another drill weekend, a party or something like that, I understand what's going on. I can't help but believe that you're here at the right time, at the right place. We need the right people at the right place at the right time. Without you, we wouldn't be where we're going. You're our future, because I'm timing out. You need to be fostering the next generation and making sure the right people come up through the system. But if anybody, your employer, your family, is worried that you're not a functional part of making things better, I can tell you that my belief is without you, we wouldn't be in any sort of a good place. The JAG Corps is the guidon for the Army and the military. We need to be doing the things we're doing, or else things wouldn't be that good. We need to be the right place. We need to be at the right place at the right time, doing the right things. I thank you for your service, seriously, your families for putting up with you, and your employers for putting up with you. I'm gone an awful lot. My employer, you know, I'm an elected official. It's great to be an elected. You know, there's an awful lot we go through, and I know that you're going through it. So I thank you for everything that you do, and I appreciate the time here today. So have a good balance of your training. Thank you. This looks perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Just a quick announcement. You are released for lunch and be back at 13:30. There will be a CLE ethics presentation in this auditorium if you need that for your CLE. And also there is a SVC meeting outside at break time near the CLE. Thank you. Nice meeting you, sir. Yeah.
Are they still taking pizza money out there? Yeah. Are you going to the social event? Probably. Oh, yeah. I'll put the $5 in anyway. Yeah. I don't usually get too motivated to go do things anyway.
Sir, I don't want to hold up your lunch. I have a quick question. Like from time to time when you have those task force set up with the police status commander, where do they get their kind of 10 Vision headquarters right across the full Leavenworth, the meeting there. So I'm trying to get in with, just to see what we can do with their relationship.
They did that. Send me an email. And then I can get a hold of the SK over there and make sure that everything is, have that meeting. This is what the TJ wants.
Exactly.
The TJ wants.
Thanks, sir.
TJ wants these meetings, so that's the meeting you want to have.
I appreciate the.
Do you? Do you? Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, come out that way.
I mostly operate out of
That doesn't mean it wouldn't potentially happen if General Alfano could figure out a way to do something. Is that an interest? Oh, absolutely. I'm retired.
So I think we told them 12:30, so maybe we'll start in 10 minutes.
And I don't know how much you reserve, but I can kind of move those.
Okay, so it's 12:30 to 1:30 is what we had allocated, so we'll just give them like maybe a few more minutes. Because they may... Okay, whatever you... all right, sounds good.
Where there's a will, there's a way sometimes, so it's always good to be first. It's kind of like we don't have an Army Reserve person to apply, we haven't been able to, so we haven't been able to bust the fiscal issues, which are first. Jeff, send me an email if that's going to interest you. It does. I'll tell him, he may go, oh, that's a good idea for something. Resume, I think Mike was interested in that. Yeah. Thank you, appreciate it. Sure.
Housewarming, you've ever seen everything Do you know where the? Do you know if there's a sign-in sheet?
All right, everyone, we're going to start in 4 minutes, right at 12:30, okay? All right, and you're good with your mic?
Yes, ma'am. I think I'm good. Colonel Rogers was just here. I wonder if she'll know.